For the first time in a calendar year, we got to see J.J. McCarthy play a little football. How'd it go? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. I appreciate my hashtag everydayers so very much. You all make the world go round. This very exciting episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Today on the show, we got to go over that preseason game. It is Sunday. They played Saturday. Consider this your Monday episode. So there's an episode now. There's not an episode tomorrow. It's the same thing. Don't get weird about it. But I figured I'd put it up a day early because why not, right? So we've got quite a bit to discuss about the Vikings' 20-10 preseason victory over the Houston Texans. J.J. McCarthy played a little. Dallas Turner played a little. Donovan Jackson played a little. In fact, a lot more of the ones than I thought played a little. But also deeper in the roster, you had a lot of little interesting things going on. We have a lot of depth chart movement, I think, or at least justification for it. Depends on how you feel. But let's not get ahead of ourselves and begin with the thing everybody wants to hear about, which is the guy, if you're watching on YouTube, the jersey I am wearing is a J.J. McCarthy whiteout jersey that I acquired last year after the injury. Okay, don't get mad at me. All right, that happened after the injury. It actually kind of took forever to get these because they were like sold out immediately. But I digress. J.J. McCarthy played 12 plays, not a lot, not exactly what you would expect. It was a 12-play drive. In that drive, we can actually see a lot. There's a lot to glean from this. So I went over every single play of the first team offense and first team defense in a Patreon video that you can find at patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL as my gift to you, because I'm very excited about the Minnesota Vikings season. It is free to watch. All you have to do is have a Patreon account that you can sign up with, and you can watch without giving me a dime. Of course, I would love it if you joined, but no pressure. I want you to be able to see it. So you can go see me break all that down play by play. But I'll give you the broad strokes about J.J. McCarthy. Pretty good. It's nice. There's your take home. Yeah, pretty good. Did pretty good. Wasn't perfect, but pretty good. Here's some things that I liked. The timing was really nice. I think all the balls got out when they were supposed to, and they went to the guy that they were supposed to go to. It's kind of hard to tell because I don't have that all 22 yet as of this recording. I'm working on that, and I will do a follow up with the all 22 to make sure that I'm right about all this. And very often in the all 22, okay, if you're new to this show, I will say stuff after the show, and it will be a very instant reaction, and that's the emotion, and that's kind of what that show is for. And then we're going to go back and double check everything, and every week I will be correcting myself. So just be prepared for that. Be prepared for the film to reveal things that maybe we didn't see on the live watch, and for that to be perfectly okay. We should still chase that information. But the timing to me looked really nice. The ball was out. The pressures that happened didn't come super, super late in the down like they did with, say, Brett Rippon, who had a pretty awful game. And that timing, being able to kind of keep up with the speed of the game was one of the things I was really watching for. I sort of expected him to be able to suss out what's going on pre-snap or make the proper reads because he's been taking basically nothing but mental reps for a whole year. It was the physical part. It was the sort of actual timing and bullets flying, responding to pressure, the real life tactile, you're in an actual wartime situation stuff that I thought was going to be a bit of a struggle. And he struggled less with that than I thought. The accuracy was okay. He hit most of the throws he was supposed to hit. There was one that he was rolling out to his left to Jordan Addison on a designed rollout that ends up a little bit behind him. There was one to Lucky Jackson that got a little bit high on him. I think he just got a little excited and he was a little bit turned up and maybe put a little bit too much zip on it. Then there was one to Jordan Mason, I believe, was still in at running back. That was like back foot fade away, guy falling into him that ended up a little high. You can't really be mad at that one. And the rest of them were fine. But, of his 7 passes, 3 of them had at least an accuracy question. None of them were egregious misses. They were all kind of just outside the frame, made the wide receiver work a little bit hard for it. And that led to 2 of his 3 incompletions. The other one was a batted down, kind of aborted screenplay disaster thing that really was more of a failure on the whiteboard than it was of any particular player, and a good read by the Texans edge rusher. I think that's the broad strokes on JJ. Accuracy was okay, but the poise was really nice. And I actually think the play, there's 2 plays everybody are going to talk about. One comes from a play that Donovan Jackson tripped, and he kind of looked like he got thundered. He tripped over. I'm going to get to Jackson because I don't think he had a very good debut, but this is not the play that I think I care about too much. He tripped. It happens. You kind of got to get used to playing to the guy next to you, get your depths right, keep your feet out of each other's way. That's a chemistry thing. Young guy, new center, they'll figure it out. But on that play, guy diving straight into JJ's legs, and he hits a beautiful, beautiful ball to a blaze out, diving catch by Jordan Addison, who looked completely insane in this game, as he kind of always has all camp and all last year. I mean, he's just a really good player. And converting, I believe that was a 3rd down as well. Or no, it was like a 2nd and 9. Actually, look at it, 2nd and 5. I take notes and then I don't want to look at them. But the point I want to make about that play is I do think it was a really good throw. I know it was a diving catch. Addison was held up a little bit by pretty physical coverage he had to fight through, but that ball was there when it was supposed to be, and it's on the receiver to meet it when it gets there. And Addison was a little late, but he could dive for it and make the catch anyways, so good for him. Kind of crazy play by Addison to fight through all that and still get there on time. And then a few plays later, a 4th down, after a rough miss, high miss, dangerous miss. If there was a safety lurking over there, that's very interceptable, and it's just kind of got lucky that the safety happened to have other things to do. He ends up getting flushed out by a stunt that doesn't get picked up, and he gets pretty quick pressure. The Texans are in total man coverage, and he flushes out, picks up the first down, 4th and 4. It's not the craziest looking play. It's not like this crazy cool scramble play. It's not like you're looking at something Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen would do. But rather, it to me was a very poised decision. And I know that's a little backwards to say, the scramble out and convert with your legs is not usually associated with being a poised thing to do. That's usually like the panicky thing that the Christian Ponders of the world do. But for me, there were a lot of sort of tempting opportunities at difficult throws that you would have to take if you weren't very mobile, if you were like a statue in the pocket or if you're hurt or whatever, or that it was just kind of tempting to try to throw a little crossbody one. You had a little bit of room. You could have hit Addison, big room over the middle. If he catches it, he's running forever, and it's tempting. And you could even argue that he should have taken that. I would listen to that argument for sure. But it's 4th and 4. And you can walk to the first down. Easy mode. And I'm not going to hold it against him for going a little bit easy mode, taking a little bit more of a conservative decision as a young quarterback, and doing so really decisively. Like, he didn't take a long time to find that. He flushed out of the pocket. He kept his eyes downfield, realized that he didn't like any of the angles, saw a bunch of space, and took it. I really liked that. And I think that showed the poise and the decisiveness. Also, I should mention that there were a couple of veterans on the sideline doing interviews that mentioned, that told Kevin O'Connell, this was an interview with Kevin O'Connell, like right before halftime. And he said a couple of the veterans told him, great command of the huddle and all that. So I guess we're checking that box if you're going to take that at face value. And while you could absolutely criticize this JJ McCarthy performance, and I did, there's a lot more to like than there is not to like. And so I'm pretty happy. Elsewhere on the first team, which I'm going to spend a little more time talking about and then get a little bit more of the deep roster stuff, you got your ups and your downs. We had some players I'm really excited about. We had some players I need to see more from. So we've got plenty more to go over here on the Locked On Vikings podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It's time to fuel it up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It's a grape, ginger, and lime flavored energy drink. Kind of like one of your favorite cocktails you might have out on the golf course, but minus the alcohol. It's just a quick, energizing shot. It's perfect for if you're on the back nine, you get that little lull, but you need to lock in because you're having the round of your life. I used to work at a golf course when I was a kid, and I would clean out the carts, and this was like late aughts. Like 5 Hour Energy was a fairly new product yet, and even then, there was always a 5 Hour Energy in the cup holder. There was always the empty one in the cup holder. They were very popular and still are to this day as a quick, energizing shot right at that right minute. So if you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONGolf to receive 20% off of your order. This order is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion-flavored 5 Hour Energy shots today. Moving on with the Locked On Vikings podcast, a few other things kind of on the upper part of the roster. Because we saw so much of the ones, we got a little bit of a preview of some of the guys that we've been curious about, including a lot of the first-team defense, which did give up a touchdown to Davis Mills before they came off the field. So there's going to be some questions about, are we concerned there? Long story short, I'm not. I forget who pointed this out. It was somebody on Blue Sky. I apologize to this person. They do not cover the Vikings. They were just watching, and they were just kind of like paying attention. Maybe it was Brett Coleman or like Cody Alexander or somebody like that. But who noticed that the Vikings never changed personnel in that whole drive, which is extremely out of character for Flores. Flores is always subbing people in and out, keeping people fresh. And that's not what they were doing, considering that a lot of the entire defensive line still wasn't out, by the way. This was entirely the second team defensive line. No Grenard, no Van Ginkel, no Harrison Phillips, no Jonathan Allen, right? So right out, you're going, okay, yeah, like I don't really care anymore, right? But also you didn't switch to any, 3 safety, 3 corner. You didn't do any of that stuff. Yeah, Ivan Pace and like Isaiah Rodgers were on the field. But it's pretty hard when, Bo Richter is like the key culprit on the touchdown play. Like it's hard to be like too pissed about that. So I'm not worried about the defense at all. It was an extremely vanilla version of itself. There were no real exotic blitz looks, very little coverage disguise, very little front disguise. It was kind of what you see is what you get. It's as easy as it will ever be to move that on the Flores defense. And in a real game, Davis Mills ain't getting easy mode like that. This is very much, we're all hiding our intentions. We're holding our cards close to the chest. So I'm not worried. I spent a lot of time in my Patreon review of the first team defense focusing on Dallas Turner though. And I liked what I saw, more or less. I think when it comes to edge rushers, a lot of us, okay, look in the mirror, make sure this isn't you. It's easy to fall into the trap of, I didn't notice him, he must have had a bad game. And I think if you didn't notice Dallas Turner, that's understandable. A lot of the runs went away from him, or the pass was, out quick enough where he didn't, the defensive line didn't really matter. Not expecting you to, keep an eye on him, on all 11 players equally or whatever. And if you didn't notice him, you didn't notice him. But that certainly doesn't necessarily mean that the guy had a bad day or anything like that. There was one missed tackle. I think Pete Bursich did a pretty good job of breaking it down on the Fox 9 broadcast. Just, he spent a little bit too long and got a little bit too greedy about showing his color to the inside. Essentially what he's trying to do is, so he's got the gap to the outside of the tight end, call it the D gap. And he's flashing his pads into the C gap. He wants that running back to see purple in the C gap so he bounces out. You want to say, come to my D gap, and I'm going to show you the C gap so you don't think you can come here. You're going to think you can come here. I'm going to flash across this tight end, who I have complete upper body control over, by the way, which Dallas Turner did a great job of. It's a tight end, but it's Cade Stover. Like this guy was blocking Jonathan Grenard last year. Like this would be the guy if you were playing the Texans. And, did a great job of getting upper body control of him and being able to flash back and forth, put his pads wherever he wants to, right? He was just a scotch late to make the decision, and the running back did a good job of bouncing it quickly to the outside and having a lot of acceleration, where Dallas Turner couldn't quite make the tackle, but it wasn't a play I was particularly mad about, and that was by far the worst one. Everything else, he did a great job of taking control of his blocker. I shouldn't say that. There was one pass rush I didn't like where he tried a 2-hand swipe that didn't work. But I thought he did a great job of transitioning speed to power when he tried that. In the run game, he was in the gap he was supposed to be, penetrated when he was supposed to, stayed home when he was supposed to, played a really responsible game. I think he made all the right reads. I just can't really find anything to be unhappy about with the game that Dallas Turner had. A very well-played, make the right decisions kind of game. And then, play like fundamentally sound. I think it was a fundamentally sound, responsible game for Dallas Turner. I'm really happy with that. Gabe Murphy is the other guy to maybe talk about. We'll talk about some of the deep roster stuff later, but I actually want to flip back to the offensive side of the ball and discuss Donovan Jackson. Donovan Jackson plays in that same 12-play drive. Here's what I'm going to say about it, okay? I have 2 plays that I genuinely think are just like really bad L's. And if you take 2 L's in 12 plays, that's a really bad clip for a guard. You got to do better next time you play. And I don't know if Donovan Jackson will play in the preseason again. I don't think any of the ones. I kind of want him to. You need the reps. I want him to have the reps, but he'll have the joint practice reps, and the team might prioritize those, especially in Patriots week. And then when you get to the Titans week, you're kind of more so using that game to figure out the bottom of your 53. That's not really a get reps for the rookies kind of game for a lot of franchises. So I don't know if he's going to play in the next 2. So next time we see him, which will be against Chicago, I need to see a little bit better than what we saw. I'll go over those 2 reps. So the first one was the very first play of the game. It was a zone run that ended up having to bounce to the wrong side because Donovan Jackson misread and didn't see the blitzer coming. It's a very rookie mistake. He's looking at a double team he's going to have with Ryan Kelly. He doesn't understand that he has the gap to his left, the B gap. A linebacker comes into that gap and he's not looking. Flashes right by him and he doesn't get a hand on him until it's way too late. So now you got penetration in the backfield. The run gets blown up. That can't happen. You have to diagnose that properly pre-snap. Welcome to the NFL. Guys blitz from depth and they're very fast. You don't really get time to watch them sit there and take a read step, right? Some of these guys just shoot up field. They just come. And then the other rep that I had an issue with, again, it wasn't that tripping rep. That one looked really aesthetically bad, but he tripped over the ankle. I'm not freaking out about it. It was the last rep of the drive. The 3rd and 5 that JJ McCarthy couldn't convert because he was under pressure. The one where he backfoots one and Jordan Mason tries to go way up, hospital ball for this catch he can't even bring in, and it wouldn't have even been a first down anyways. This really nasty play, but it was pressure that got him. And it wasn't just Donovan Jackson on that one, but I just thought he did a pretty bad job picking up a stunt. And both of those are mental errors, not physical ones. So as a rookie, I'm not too pressed about you making some mental errors. But if you're going to start, we can't have that. That's going to get JJ McCarthy killed against Chicago, Atlanta, Cincinnati, and so forth. So we got to clean that up. You got to get a little better at reading those guys when it quickly changes post-snap who you're supposed to block. You have to figure that out. As a rookie, I do expect some of those mistakes, but that doesn't mean that they're acceptable, if that makes sense. That doesn't mean I think he's a bust, but that's going to be bad for the offense. And elsewhere, in the other 10 plays, really great run game stuff. Every time he was in a double with Ryan Kelly, they took Tim Settle down to the woodshed. Some great climbs to the second level in pretty tight quarters. I thought he moved really well. I thought he anchored well a couple times on some pretty nasty bull rushes. So there is certainly a lot to like, but the horrible reality of O-line is you can do 10 things right and 2 things wrong, and it's the 2 wrong things that are going to define your day. And I think that's the kind of day that Donovan Jackson had. But hey, you get to watch film on that, learn about it. Now you know what to work on, and you spend the next few weeks really drilling that, getting a little bit better at those stunt pickups and stuff. They go a little faster in the NFL. He was good at that in college, but they were college stunts, The idiots from Michigan State are not going to do this like the Houston Texans do. And the Patriots and Titans are going to be just as tough. So, and so is every other team in the NFL. It's a different game speed, and his brain just has to grow up and get, to NFL speed. I think those are the 3 guys. McCarthy, Donovan Jackson, and Dallas Turner are the 3 guys that I was most interested in watching. And then there were a few guys that really popped off the tape and grabbed my interest, and I didn't get a choice in that. I'm going to talk about those guys next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Gametime. If you are deciding to head out to a ball game, maybe the Vikings' next preseason game against the New England Patriots, a nice cheap ticket if you're looking to get to a game and you don't want to spend that much. You can find that at Gametime, and they'll help make it even cheaper with their zone deals that can pick the best seats. All you say is the section and say, you can pick the seat for me. They will find the best deal in that section for you. And Gametime makes the whole process fast and simple no matter what you're buying, whether it's for a Vikings game, a baseball game, a concert, whatever. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to kickoff, and they've got incredible last-minute deals as people are just trying to get rid of their tickets, and they will find a way to get those desperate people to give you a very good deal. You get clear seat views and a panoramic view of it so you can make sure that you're satisfied, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Moving on with the Locked On Vikings podcast, the position battles were fascinating. On Friday, I talked about some of the battles that really intrigued me, such as the backup QB battle. So if you haven't been paying attention, all camp, Sam Howell, who started camp as the clear-cut QB2, has been struggling, playing horribly, and ceding ground to Brett Rippon, who one day started splitting QB2 reps with him, and one day took a whole day as QB2 with Sam Howell as QB3, and it looked like we were seeing momentum toward a switch in the depth chart. This game took that entire train and threw it off the tracks, off a bridge, and into a river. That momentum has died as Sam Howell had a really nice day and Brett Rippon struggled. And to add insult to injury for Rippon, Max Brosmer comes in the fourth quarter and leads a couple of really nice drives, one ending in a touchdown and one ending in kneel downs in the red zone and looked like it was going to score also. While Brett Rippon struggles. So suddenly the dynamic goes from being a battle for QB2 to a battle for QB3, while Sam Howell kind of solidifies his hold on the backup job. And it's nice to see him, play well, because it was getting kind of worrisome seeing him struggle in camp. But the preseason game does more than camp does. If you struggle in camp but play well in the preseason game, it's what you did in the preseason game that matters, and vice versa. So over the next two games, I don't know how much Sam Howell will see. We'll probably see a couple of drives from him in the next game. It's going to be Rippon and Brosmer mostly. And I'm curious to see how they split that time and when, if at all, they make a move if the next couple games go the same way. When they make that official switch and they put Brosmer in before Rippon, right? Elsewhere in the depth chart, one of the other position battles that I highlighted was Ty Chandler and Xavier Scott. Nothing wrong with the day Ty Chandler had. It was fine. He had, took the room that was there. Nothing to write home about, good or bad. Xavier Scott comes out as one of the studs of the game, and Trey Stewart barely gets any time at all. So Xavier Scott is clearly somebody they wanted to get a good hard look at, and he paid that off. He had much wider holes to deal with. I thought the second team and third team lines, those backup lines, really started to beat up on the Texans in that kind of late second, early third quarter when Xavier Scott was just getting going. But he showed a lot of wiggle in big open holes. He did well in open space. He made the proper reads, hit the, foot in the ground, make your cut when you want to. Really explosive running. And beyond just he benefited from better blocking, which he 100% did benefit from better blocking, or maybe worse competition if you want to put it that way. But I still thought he did a really, really good job. And so he's making that a little interesting. In the wide receiver realm, I should mention we got some bad news here. Rondale Moore on the first punt of the game, first punt return of the game, he gets an awkward tackle out of bounds. I didn't actually catch it. It looked a little hip droppy, but I don't know if it qualifies as a hip drop, but it was kind of in that weird world where you're kind of falling on each other's legs. And he injures his left knee. His right knee was the one that he's been rehabbing for a year. So this is the other knee now. A pretty significant injury, according to Kevin O'Connell. They're waiting on an MRI, but I think the fear in the air is the worst, is that it's some kind of ligament tear and Rondale Moore will not be a part of the Minnesota Vikings this season. It's brutal, really sad, and it sort of hung a dark cloud over what was otherwise a really optimistic game. This is the bad news that everyone's kind of a little bummed about, even if they're happy that they played well or they did good or they did whatever. Vikings win 20-10. Everyone's pretty bummed that it came at the cost of Rondale Moore getting hurt the first time he touches the ball. in the preseason after spending all year to get back. Just brutal. Elsewhere in injury news, Zeke Correll late in the game goes down with what turns out to be a fractured ankle. So any shot he had to overtake Michael Juergens, that goes out the window. He'll be probably like a waived injured IR, maybe injury settlement guy, depending on how long that takes to heal. But that gives Michael Juergens essentially an unopposed run to that backup center job, which, man, it was rough again. Michael Juergens botching snaps has been a thing all camp, and there was an aborted snap with Max Brosmer in the fourth quarter. On replay, it looked like the snap was fine, and Brosmer kind of knuckled it and lost control of it. It looked like it was Brosmer's fault to me, but considering that Juergens has struggled with this in camp and the replay angle wasn't great, I don't feel particularly confident in that assessment. If I had to guess, I would say it's Brosmer's fault, but there's a decent likelihood that I'm wrong there. And that caps off what is also like Juergens has had some really rough moments all through camp and all through last year's preseason, and he had more rough moments in this game. I wonder if the Vikings are going to start looking elsewhere for backup center. That said, they've been adamant that they really like Juergens, and not on the podium in a like propaganda way. Like the Star Tribune guys are like, man, yeah, these guys really like Juergens. And you have to understand about the Minnesota local media. If you're not a Vikings fan, the Minnesota local media will jump on chances to be negative. They love it when there's like some weird angle they can say that Justin Jefferson's going to like demand a trade. Or that some player isn't performing up to expectations. They salivate when the kicker struggles a little. By the way, Will Reichard, perfect day. We love to see it. 2 for 2 on field goals, 2 for 2 on extra points, and no drama to any of them. But I mean, like, this is a local media that loves to play that woe is me Midwestern card. And so when I hear, yeah, they're really pushing that they like Michael Juergens and they even see him as a starter, I believe that they are telling you the truth. And that's also why I believe that they're telling the truth when they talk about the Vikings being really optimistic about JJ McCarthy. But I don't get it. And I will continue to not get it. It just looks rough to me. But I don't want to dwell on it because speaking of O-line battles, Justin School, I thought, entered this game in a little bit of trouble, and I thought he acquitted himself well. Walter Rouse does give up a sack on Brett Rippon, but it was a really bad Brett Rippon play. He stood there in the pocket, no awareness, took way too long, took a bad sack. I thought Rouse held up for a reasonable amount of time. And then we have the defense. So the two guys on defense that really impressed me, that wowed, I thought, were Gabe Murphy, who I think ends up with 2 sacks or a sack and a half. I don't know how they counted one where like 3 different guys were chasing the quarterback. And Jalen Redmond, who was also in on that one alongside Bo Richter, who had also a game with a bunch of explosion, but Bo Richter also had some really bad plays, so I kind of call him an ups and downs game for him. But really, Murphy and Redmond, fantastic games. And it's still important for those two guys who had pretty strong holds on their roster spots, but they further solidify. And then you have Levi Drake Rodriguez, who I thought looked pretty nice, penetrative, like had a decent game. And then Taki Taimani got in the game, and he made some waves when he was in the game. That battle's, I think, a little feistier, but right now, Levi Drake Rodriguez has pole position. He's on the second team, Taimani's on the third team, and I do think the Vikings only really are going to keep one because they're not going to cut Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, who they started over Taimani in this game. As for the secondary, hard to see, so it's hard to say. I can only see what's on TV, and those guys aren't on the screen for a lot. So I can't tell you a lot about how like Jay Ward or Theo Jackson or, Khalif Hailasi, who gets 2 interceptions, but both of them were pretty gifted. They're tip drills, hey, tips and overthrows, we got to have those. Good for you. But they're not going to move the needle for me. For a guy that, like, if you weren't already in pole position to make the team, I'm not putting you there because you got a tip. And the same thing goes for Ambry Thomas, who catches a horrifyingly bad overthrow from, I think, Caden Slovis. If not, it was Graham Mertz, the Florida rookie in Houston, both of whom looked absolutely horrible for the Texans. But I'm not giving, 3 interceptions is awesome, and I love to see, quarterbacks stressing out because the D-line's chasing him everywhere. But I'm not going to go super crazy on changing my secondary depth chart depth chart there, especially because I can't see everything else everybody did. So we'll put a pin in that until I can really see the all-22 and take a look at it. But again, overall, everything I wanted to see, more or less, I saw. I wanted to see J.J. McCarthy handle pressure well. I think my favorite play of his day was him handling pressure properly, getting flushed out of the pocket, running for that 4th and 4, not panicking, not forcing anything, taking the easy, move the sticks. Love that. I wanted to see Dallas Turner play physical ball, and I did. You got a tight end a lot because the Houston Texans are weird like that. I don't know why they keep putting tight ends like enthusiastically on edge rushers, but we'll take it. And it's nice to see Dallas Turner physically dominate those smaller players the way an edge rusher is supposed to. I'm happy about that. Even Donovan Jackson, we saw some of those rookie moments, but they're rookie. They're very rookie. They're not the kinds of things that I would expect to keep seeing in 2 or 3 years. So I'm way happier than I am unhappy with this game. That doesn't mean I don't have criticisms and, little tiny concerns here or there, or little things that didn't work out here or there, but there's a lot more good than bad. And that's nice. We can take that and cuddle it for a whole week until the next one. Before I go, another quick note, special teams wise, Tim Jones, 2 special teams penalties. Ty Felton, probably the stud of special teams on either side of the ball. He had a forced fumble where he just timed a hit on a punt returner really well. That punt returner also kind of was already flubbing it, and then you hit him and it hits the ground. They couldn't recover it, but still great play. A couple of other great plays as punt gunners or I think one good one, a really nice contain on a kickoff, and a good play as a punt gunner for Ty Felton. I thought he just had an ace day on special teams. And Tim Jones did not, which I think further clarifies that wide receiver group. If you take Rondale Moore sadly out of that equation, I think you can take Tim Jones out of that equation unless he does some really crazy stuff on special teams in the next 2 games to make up for the mistakes he made, getting a holding and I think a block in the back. It was a blindside, but it was a horrible blindside block, like just an egregious one. You got to make up for those mistakes in the next games and then some, which is a tall order. So if you presume that he won't do that, you suddenly have a much easier time constructing this Jefferson, Addison when he comes back from his suspension, Naylor, Lucky Jackson. By the way, Lucky Jackson's firmly wide receiver 4, especially with Rondale Moore out, who is probably his only real competition for that. Ty Felton, who's going to make it on special teams at least, and just by virtue of being a 3rd round pick. And then you have like one more shot for like a Jayshon Jones or somebody like a Miles Price who caught a touchdown in the back of the end zone. There's a lot of intrigue to the rest of this roster. I'll probably try to go over it in a more organized way. I'm going to do another 53-man roster. I usually do one after the first preseason game and then one right before cut down day. So we'll do our kind of our 3rd 53-man prediction of the off season, and of course Town Hall Tuesday. So get your questions in. There's a Google form in the show notes. You can get to Town Hall Tuesday there. Give me a hot take, give me a question. I'm sure you have all kinds of burning desires, so let me know and I'll respond to them on the show. In the meantime, go check out patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL, where you can find my full breakdown of those first 2 drives and sort of show my work for a lot of the opinions I had about guys like McCarthy, Donovan Jackson, Dallas Turner, and otherwise, I will see you on Tuesday. And as always, Skol.